Namaste, folks. We're going to start quick 20-30 minutes worth of yoga. Hang out on your feet. If you're sitting, you can do these things in a chair. I'll do a chair modification video on YouTube, longer version, and also in a few weeks for you to run through live. So this is your chance to stop in your day and notice, what are the sensations? How am I breathing? What's my energy level? Be really curious, as if you've never met yourself before. You can start to notice, if you haven't already, whether you're stacking up your bones, like bones over heels, hips over legs, ribs over hips. Point the bottom of the ribs straight down into the top of the hips. Head lined up over that whole stack, arms hanging off your back. And see if you can slow your breath down just a little bit. Remember, we're aiming for breathing down toward the diaphragm, as low into the lungs and as far back into the lungs as we can get. If it feels like you're forcing or you're gasping for air because you're breathing too slow, then you're breathing too slow. Don't force. Go for a calm, slow breath. Then feel the weight on the soles of the feet so that heels outside of the feet, hip distance apart, and you're going to press down on those legs as you take the arms up, Urdhva Hastasana. You can decide, do you want to stay here and reach the elbows and the little fingers up? Or do you want to move up and down with your breath? Whatever's appropriate for you. Each time your arms go up, the legs push down. They can release some of the work as the arms lower. And if you're staying, you can see if you can continue to lift those arms to take the ribs up off of the hips, back of the ribs as much as the front of the ribs. If you can take the elbows up off the underarms, which will eventually slide your shoulder blades a little further down from your ears. Can you reach the little finger side, especially of the hand, up toward the ceiling more, but all the fingertips are magnetized up that way. So we are stretching vertically as much as possible while continuing to breathe deep into the cylinder. Next time you exhale, press and reach as far as you can. Push the floor into the basement and reach up past the ceiling. Big breath in, expand the cylinder. And then exhale, let it all go. Let's take the legs a little bit wide. It doesn't have to be really wide. I'm going to grab a chair because we want to arch the back while we forward fold. Prasarita Padottanasana. So for example, this wide with the legs, but I'm going to turn sideways so you can see. Hands are going to go on the chair. You can use blocks if you're extremely flexible. You and the floor are best friends. Use your desk if that's where you're hanging out. Legs are going to stay extended. So find a little bit of a back bend even before you go. So lift the navel off the pubic bone, lift the base of the breastbone up. Make sure your ribs have not collapsed in the back. We still have length in that lower back. And then fold just at the hips. Let your hands reach down to whatever they're reaching on. And then you can treat it like going into cow on your hands and knees. Press into your legs. Press into your hands. And then without moving hands or feet, bring the arms and legs toward each other, which will help extend the spine. We're using the limbs for leverage here. So if this is a tough place for you to be, move in and out of it. Otherwise, hang out here. Continue to lift the sits bones, lift the breastbone away from each other. so that you're extending the whole front of the torso. Make sure this isn't a crunch the back of the neck time either. As we're lengthening the front, we are not thinking of shortening and crunching the back, right? So we're creating more length on the front of the spine, but we're maintaining what we can on the back of the torso as well. And then when you're ready to come up, get ready to push down on your feet, engage your core to help. Your butt muscles are going to be very useful here. And an inhalation brings you up. And then you can bring your feet back underneath you. Check in and notice what you're feeling. And let's go into Parshva side angle pose. So this is another wide-legged pose. Step. If your body is saying, I ain't jumping today, please live in your own body, not in mine. Guarantee you, you don't want to be here anyway. 10 or 2 sort of foot position for the pose. So if you can use your right foot as the front foot, go there. That's your 12 o'clock. Your back foot is going to be pointing toward 2 o'clock. Sorry. If you're using the left foot, back foot will be pointing. I think I just said this backwards. Either 2 or 10 with the front foot as 12 o'clock. Turn both thighs out, leaving the feet where they are. Turn the ribs so that they're facing the long side of your mat if you have one, or forward wherever that was when you started. Arms come up as the shoulder blades go down. Shift the hips. So as if we're going into triangle. And then when you run out of shift, fold at the hip joint, that front leg, and let the knee bend. And then bring your elbow down to your thigh and twist even more by pressing down on the thigh, pressing a little bit backwards to open the inner thigh. This upward arm comes alongside your ear, same as it was in Urdhva Hastasana. So we're not letting the weight fall into the front leg. We want to keep that sense of the hips tilting up and back away from that front knee. The spine is long. This is not a side bend. It's as if you had one leg, this bent front leg, out of line with the rest of your torso and leg. So that back leg and your torso are all in one line. And then that front leg, the bent leg, and the underneath arm are out of line here. See if you can open a little bit more into that twist, open that inner thigh a little bit more, reach maybe a little bit more with the upper arm. Again, engage your core. You're going to be using your back leg and your breath to come up. Big inhalation. And then set it up on the other side. So again, 12 o'clock with front foot and either 10 or 2 with the back foot. Roll both thighs outward. That's going to anchor your legs. Let your hips stay where they are. They do not need to turn to the front. Front knee is going to stay right in the same direction as that 12 o'clock foot. Ribs turn away from the front leg. Arms come up, shift in the hips. And this may be a movement that you need to do a few times. Your hips may be going, whoa, what's going on here? In which case, stay with that shift back and forth. If you're good to go, fold in the hip, releasing the knee. We are not going into a lunge. We want to think more of a split and more support from that back leg. So the inner thigh is going to hug the bone on that thigh, and the hip is going to keep tipping up. Underneath elbow rests on the thigh, pressing it a little bit backwards and pressing downward to help engage more of this twist. And then upward arm alongside the ear. If you are able to turn far enough to look up toward the ceiling, sure, go for it. Now, there's all sorts of other finesse things that we can be doing, but we want to mostly notice that we are side to side here, even though our hips are turned a little bit on a diagonal. And we're making this big long line with the back leg and the upper side of the torso into that upper arm, even though the bottom side of the torso is not shortening, right? So think of the whole torso opening. And then think of maybe you're at 90 degrees at the knee. Maybe you're not. As long as that knee doesn't go past the ankle, you're good. That means you let go of your back leg. Or it means that you've got more flexibility and you can move your front foot further away from your back foot. Just make sure that you're anchored on the outside of that back heel. And again, when you're ready to come up, make sure your core is engaged. Big inhalation and that back leg are going to get you up. And then you can turn the feet forward, get them back underneath you, and check in. So if you've got a wall available, go for it. If you've got blocks available, if you've got some blanket or perhaps a third block, you do not need all these props. We're heading into downward dog, but we're doing it with some assistance here. So I've got blocks up against the wall. My hands are going on that. I've got a bolster here because my head can play games with that bolster. We would like some support generally around the forehead here, right? Some of you may need a lot of high support. So again, I'm using blocks. I'm pushing the heels of my hands into the edge of the block. I know about how far I want to step in order to be able to get into a long line. So this is like your Urdhva Hastasana again, but the hands would be facing forward. We're lifting the hips and going from a long line all the way from the heel of the hands, all the way up through the torso, into the hips, pulling those hips up and away by pushing down and forward into those blocks. And then for me, I'm going to turn this bolster on its side today. There we go. And I've got some support underneath the head that will help me to relax the neck muscles. So if you don't have this, do think of relaxing the neck muscles, not holding your head up. Your knees are extended. Your heels may or may not reach the floor. Keep pulling those legs backwards while pushing with the hands. So you're trying to push your torso further back onto your legs. And then you can either kneel to come out of it or just walk yourself in and stack your torso back up on top of your legs. And again, notice how you're doing. If you can get down on the floor, go for it. Otherwise, you can do a version of a wide-legged lunge sitting on your chair. You can go back to other videos for that one. So I've got a very wide stance going on here with my front foot on one edge of the side edge of my mat and my back foot on the other side edge of my mat. I'm from here going to turn sideways so that you can see what we're up to. We're going for, within this wide stance, back leg is very strong. Front knee is either over the ankle or a little bit behind, and we're letting the hips drop only as much as that hip will allow, or this front hip, that can be an issue too. And then we're going to get some arm and inner thigh work going here. So this arm next to the front leg, press the elbow right above the knee into the thigh while you press that knee into the arm. So we are looking for something that's going to engage your core bit and engage your inner thigh, which is part of that really deep core. We want that connection. Are you still breathing? And then to come out, you can lift yourself up towards your back leg, rotate around and come up, get your feet back underneath you, or you can take a big step forward as long as you have the strength to do that with your butt, right? And then set up that deep lunge. Again, wide from side to side, really long from front to back. Front knee over ankle, back knee fully extended. Reach back with the heel, push down with the toes. Let the hips drop only as much as your hip joints will allow. And then engage. Elbow to inner thigh. And keep breathing while you find your inner thigh. For me, this hip is not always fully functional, and that would be now. So I'm searching for inner thigh. I'm continuing to send the messaging, pressing the arm, attempting to get this leg to press back so that my nervous system will eventually get the message and something will switch on. So if you're already there, yay. If you're just finding it, be persistent, keep finding. And then again, Coming up. Swirl yourself around. Get to a place where you can control those legs. Jump or step. And then hang out for a moment and check in. And we're going to head to the floor for a couple of things. So curling up in a true child's pose, a true balasana, there are different schools of yoga. And my training was very specific that balasana, child's pose, has the knees together. If you were trained with thighs apart, you weren't trained wrong, just different. We want the one with thighs together because it's going to do something very specific here. We want your back of your torso to open as you breathe. Your thighs are getting in the way of what usually breathes. If your head will not rest on the floor, either because your back is not flexible or your legs are very long compared to your torso, use your hands, use a blanket, a softer block. We're keeping the heels as close, the sits bones as close to the heels as possible. And as you breathe into your back, you may find that your sits bones, your bottom, will release closer to your heels because your lower back, which has been overworking, may finally be willing to let go a little bit. In which case, celebrate. That's a big deal. If you're able to get your head on the floor and you want to curl your arms alongside the legs, sure. Anything that helps you to open the back of the torso and breathe into that back of the torso with your head supported, it's all good. And when you're ready to come up, big inhalation, uncurl. And we're going to come to sitting, soles of the feet together, Baddha Konasana. I'm going to be sitting up on something. You may decide you need some props because your body doesn't like to sit this way. So up high is one of the things that can help. Another thing that can help if your knees like to be way up here is to make sure that they have some support. If that's where your hips like your knees to be, it seems like hanging into space would be the good thing, right? But instead of doing the release that you wanted to do, what's happening is all those systems in your body that are trying to keep you from getting hurt are starting to engage and shorten. If you give that leg some support, they go, oh, we're good, cool, we can release, and you will get more of the release. Other games to play, take the feet further away from your torso. We are looking to get just a bit of opening here. Rather than how far down your knees go, you're just keeping the soles of the feet together. And notice what your tops of thighs, tops meaning up by the top of up by the hip joint, right? If this is bottom of thigh, this up here is top of thigh. Let this drop into gravity as much as it's willing to. Your hip joints will not release enough for your thighs to completely fall out of your hips. And then start rocking your hips. So the top of your hips are going to rainbow up and over and forward, up and over and backwards. And you're going to notice what that's like for your hip joint. And if that is already torturing you, do less, right? Or, again, you can play with adjustments. Sit higher, take your feet further away. Today I'm going to play with take my feet further away. If you can get to a place where you can stick your butt out and fold forward, go for that Adho Mukha Baddha Konasana, downward facing fixed angle. We fix the angle of our legs by bringing the feet together. And it will mostly be effective to breathe out as you are going into the stretch and breathe in as you are recovering. If things feel loose enough that you feel like, oh, I could even go forward and stay there, sure, go forward and stay there. If you feel like you can fold in half and put your head down, yay, go for it. This is not about how low do we get the shoulders. It's more about how do we fold in the hip joint. Keep that support, by the way, under the knees as you need it. You may need it more as you fold forward, depending upon your hips. So this is more like the belly getting in between the thighs than it is rounding the shoulders and trying to get the head to the feet, right? If you can fold at the hip joint and get the head to the feet, yay, that's the way you want to go. And when you're ready to come up, big inhalation, and up you come. And let your legs escape or hang out here. That's a happy spot. We're going to do one more before you relax. This one is going to be on your belly if you can get there. If you're sitting on a chair, if you fold forward, you will be able to do a bit of this. We just want to wake up the entire back of the body. We're especially going to get into that space between your shoulder blades. So start lying on the floor if you can. Just rest your forehead on your hands for a moment. Let your heels fall outward. See if you can just, again, breathe into the back of your torso and let your breath wake up as much of the back of the torso as possible. Then bring your legs back into neutral. See if you can keep the knees together, maybe the feet together, heels point toward the ceiling. And just be aware of the backs of your legs for a moment here, especially the backs of your thighs. Reach your legs a little bit long. Then bring your hands like a grasshopper next to your chest, as if you were going to do some sort of horrible push-up. And here's where it's going to start turning into a lot of work. Lift your hands off the floor. Engage the muscles between your shoulder blades. Feel that work. As we move in and out of Salabhasana, your locust pose, we're not putting the hands down. That work is going to continue. So an inhalation is going to lift the chest, the head, and the legs. An exhalation will put everything down except for the hands. So big inhalation, up into Salabhasana. As you exhale, back down you go. Feel the muscles engage as you inhale. Reach with the legs. Feel the muscles relaxing as you exhale. Keep that work in between the shoulder blades. So we're getting the whole back line of the body here, all the way from the feet up to the top of the head to work and then soften. And keep going until you feel like, oh my God, there's no way I can do any more of these. Or I will give you an exit cue, I promise. Just notice that the front of the body is starting to release and soften. Here's your exit cue. Yay, put everything back down. You can go back to that resting forehead on hands. If that's not comfortable, yes, turn your head to the side. Let the heels fall outward. Now, if you like, and you have time for relaxation, you can hang out right here and relax. If you'd rather, you can turn over onto your back. I'm going to leave you be for relaxation. If you need to go about your day, brilliant. You did a thing for yourself. I hope it's a good one.